Coming up on the Branding Deep Dive podcast.
It's so much more than that. It's actually the whole experience from start to finish, from the first time that they buy from you all the way till them telling somebody else about your brand, coming back for more, thinking of you in their first option for what they might purchase next. There are so many different aspects to retention, but it's really under this experience of engaging the customer time and time again. A lot of companies focus on acquisition, and that's great. Obviously, you want to bring in new customers. You want to bring in people that are going to be new clients to your business. However, they forget about the aspect of what happens after they purchase. They just automatically assume that they're going to stay. They're going to keep coming back. If it's a great product, then sure, they'll stay. And while a great product might do that, it's really important in this day and age when there's so much competition, there's so much saturation in different markets, depending on which industry that you're in, that you need to find something unique and interesting to engage that customer time and time again and keep them coming back for more.
This is Ahmed Shima, and welcome to the Branding Deep Dive podcast. If you're new here, this is a podcast where we have in-depth discussions with founders, marketers, and brand strategists on how to build a brand that people love. Today, we're talking to Lauren Desouza. Lauren wears a lot of hats. She's the host of Retain, the customer retention podcast. She's an alumnus of Canada's Next 36, and she's a co-founder and CEO of Ace, a startup that uses AI to help people prepare for interviews. In this episode, we dive deep into what retention marketing is and how to do it, the benefits of going through a founder development program like Next 36, how to uniquely engage your customers, and much, much more. If you want to learn more about customer retention or being a founder, this episode is a must listen. Now, here's Lauren. All right, Lauren, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. For the audience that may not be familiar with who you are and the work you do, can you give them a brief introduction?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show today, Ahmed. It's lovely to be here. So for those of you who may not know me, my name is Lauren Desouza, and I do customer success here at Gameball. So we're a retention strategy platform that focuses on building really awesome programs and strategies for businesses of all kinds and sizes in any industry. And we're focused on the world of retention marketing. So we have a platform that helps businesses build and scale loyalty programs, as well as build an all-in-one retention strategy to make sure that they're always rewarding their customers. On the side of that, I also run my own business called Ace, where we're building AI to train communication skills so we can help job seekers feel more prepared and confident. Outside of all of that, I am very deeply involved in the whole startup world. I love entrepreneurship. I love innovative projects. So I keep myself pretty busy with the whole bundle of that.
Awesome. I want to get started with retention marketing, customer retention, because I feel like these are terms that are going to keep coming up throughout the podcast. For the audience and for myself, can you give us your definition of what customer retention is and why it's so important to have a strategy around customer retention?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's something that can be different from whoever you're hearing it from different perspectives. So when you hear the word retention, it's such an umbrella topic word that it's hard to define what it really actually is. And some people may think it's just more sales or more revenue because retaining the customer means they keep coming back. But truly, it's so much more than that. It's actually the whole experience from start to finish, from the first time that they buy from you all the way till them telling somebody else about your brand, coming back for more, thinking of you in their first option for what they might purchase next. There are so many different aspects to retention, but it's really under this experience of engaging the customer time and time again. Now, the reason why it's so important is because a lot of companies focus on acquisition, and that's great. Obviously, you want to bring in new customers. You want to bring in people that are going to be new clients to your business. However, they forget about the aspect of what happens after they purchase. They just automatically assume that they're going to stay. They're going to keep coming back. If it's a great product, then sure, they'll stay. And while a great product might do that, it's really important in this day and age when there's so much competition, there's so much saturation in different markets, depending on which industry that you're in, that you need to find something unique and interesting to engage that customer time and time again and keep them coming back for more. And whether that's not just a sale, but even just engaging with the brand. So being an advocate, becoming an ambassador for the brand, and finding different ways to stand out. One thing that we find with our customers a lot, and keep in mind that with Gameball, we work with companies of all different sizes and industries. So we're seeing this across the board, not just one specific industry. But you find that every single business is different and they're trying to find retention strategies in different ways. However, it really comes down to customer experience and providing something to the customer that makes them feel like they want to come back, they feel valued, they feel appreciated, And all of that ties under retention. So to me, it really comes down to the experience and how you engage the customer in that way.
Now, you mentioned Gameball. I know you work for Gameball. How does Gameball fit into this picture of customer retention? Like if I'm a business and I basically, I work with Gameball, like how do I work with Gameball to increase my customer retention? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So Gameball is a retention strategy platform. And so we do an all-in-one retention marketing platform, basically. So we started out with loyalty, but now we do the full suite of retention marketing products. So let's say you were a business, either you're on Shopify or another platform, or maybe you're a brick and mortar moving to digital and you want to increase your online presence. So you have Shopify and Shopify POS, for example. You might come to Gameball because you have this group of customers and you're trying to figure out, how do I reward them? How do I engage them? How do I communicate with them? How do I build a really great experience for them? So you would use Gameball to create a couple of things. You might create a rewards program with them where they can earn and spend points for specific actions that you want to be happening. You can have referrals happening there. You can have VIP levels happening, all these different ways to uniquely engage. Now, the key word there is uniquely engage, because you can't just slap on a rewards program and expect it to work. You need to understand your customers' behaviors, what you want to be rewarding them for, what actions you're trying to get them to do, and creating that overall really nice experience for them. And then on top of that, we have things like email marketing. We also have things like automation and communication. So for example, if you're saying to yourself, okay, I have this group of 500 customers where I really want to get the right message to them at the right time to the right person. How do I do that? Gameball can help you with that. So basically, we're an all-in-one retention strategy platform that helps you engage your customers and continue to build a really great experience for them.
Okay, so like just for me, I gotta like use concrete examples. So if I'm like a cookie store, we sell cookies, and we're looking to also do online orders. So we get the Shopify storefront online. What we can do using Gameball is basically give points to people that buy regularly, and then also like a whole suite of things to make sure that we're keeping them engaged throughout the whole customer journey. But one of the main offerings that I got is the loyalty program, rewards program, and then of course the other things as well. But is that accurate? Like, am I getting like Gameball's core offering right?
Yeah, absolutely. So going off of your cookie example, actually, we do have an incredible cookie company that's one of our clients, which is, if you're in the US or Canada, they're called Mary McLeod's, and they are just scrumptious. So definitely check it out. But for example, if you were this cookie company, you might say, okay, we want to set up a rewards program where people feel engaged, valued, appreciated for all their purchases. And we also want them to keep coming back for when they have to purchase something for, let's say, Mother's Day, I don't know, Halloween, all these different occasions that they might be celebrating. So what they would do is they would go on Gameball, attach it to their Shopify store so they can just plug it in and have it live on their store all in one click. And then they would set up their rewards. So you would earn points for buying 3 cookies from the dark chocolate cookie tin. You would earn points for every purchase. You would earn points for buying on a specific weekend. Let's say you get double the points on Mother's Day weekend for fun. And then you might also get points for referrals as well. So you're giving them multiple different ways to engage with your cookie brand. And then when they earn all these points, they can use these points to spend on dollars off, percentage off, free shipping, free product, etc. So what we find companies like this cookie company might do is create a really engaging experience based on what their customers look for. Sometimes people like to try new products, so they offer more free products as a reward. They like to do like flash sales, so they might do something like that. But the whole idea is that you can earn and spend points based on your customers' behaviors and what you're trying to accomplish as a business.
No, that's really cool. Now, moving on to the Retain podcast. So
Yeah,
Retain is a podcast that you host for Gameball. Is that correct?
that's right.
Okay, so what I'm curious about is what's is this part of customer retention? Is the podcast there to help you guys retain your customers, or how do you guys think through and really the question is for like business owners that are looking to start a podcast, right? Like, how should they be thinking through creating a podcast? Is it more educational for people that are looking to work with Gameball, or is it like, how are you thinking through that? What's the purpose behind it? What's the business reason for kind of this podcast?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think something very important to think about before you do start a podcast, because obviously, as I'm sure you know, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of consistent work to build up that audience and that following. But the real reason behind Gameball doing a podcast is twofold. Number one, retention, like you mentioned, because the thing is, as a business who's focused on retention and loyalty and being a thought leader in the space, we have to continue building insights that are going to help our customers continuously improve with their programs as well. We can't stay static. We have to keep bringing in new education, new ideas, new insights that will help people improve their retention strategy. So that's one part of it. Second is the education. So you basically got it right on the money there. And so the education aspect is also for us as well, because what's wonderful about the podcast is that we're always bringing on different guests with different perspectives. So it's a bunch of different perspectives on the same niche concept. So you get to learn so much about it. And as a customer success executive myself, it also gives me ideas to help my clients as well. So kind of just a triple win across the board there, but really rooted in education and kind of bringing in new ideas and new thoughts and new processes to the whole world of retention, since it is such a large and abstract space, in my opinion.
Now, are your guests like thought leaders in the retention space, or is it more like your top performing clients, or how do you get the guests on the podcast?
Yeah, so we work with a wonderful company called Fame, and they help us with the whole production of the podcast, and they are just fantastic at what they do. But the real goal of our podcast is to bring in thought leaders. So we haven't really ventured into the client showcase aspect just yet, or like case study style just yet. But right now we're focused on bringing in thought leaders who either have a very niche topic that they are domain experts in, or thought leaders in the customer retention or customer experience or customer happiness space, because those three things kind of work hand in hand of creating really unique, fun, scalable customer experiences. But definitely more towards the thought leaders, because that's where you get really good insights. You bring in people with completely different perspectives, and we have people joining us from all over the world sometimes. So it's really interesting to get that whole global view on things. But maybe one day we'll venture into the client studies kind of thing.
Yeah, no, one thing that I just wanted to share on my end is like, I didn't really have purpose perspective when I started the podcast. And what I noticed is, like you said about the thought leadership piece, right? Like when I started, it was just like my friends that would like listen here and there.
Yeah.
And even though like, I think a lot of them probably wouldn't even listen, they would just see like a clip here and there. But what would happen is that like anytime something like branding related or like marketing related would come up, they would send it to me. Right. And so like in their minds, the perspective had kind of like shifted. I was like, oh, like Ahmed's not just like, a random guy anymore. He's like into this stuff. And so like, let me ask him his perspective about it. And so, I mean, at a smaller scale, like, not running a business or stuff like that, like I definitely also saw the effects of that. And so, for anyone that's in the business space, it's even more important to have that kind of like be top of mind for people. And one of the ways you can do that is through a podcast or through content where, you talk about whatever your business is doing. And then you just, whenever your customers or your people, prospects see that kind of content, they'll immediately think of you. So, I mean, this is just a personal thing.
I was just going to add to that. I definitely agree with you there. I think what's really interesting is, since there's so much noise out there and everybody's doing content and this and that, it can seem intimidating and it can seem hard to kind of break through all of that. But I find when people are really consistent and they focus on a very specific niche that they care about, they can continue talking about, they want to continue talking about, that's when they're really successful. Like I have one of my friends who talks about UX and UI on LinkedIn all the time. He just goes deep into all of it. He doesn't stop. He's just consistently talking about UX, UI. But I love seeing his content. He does a bunch of mix of different things like carousels, posts, long form, short form, whatever. But now whenever I see UX, UI things, I always send it to him, because in my mind, he's now the UX, UI guy.
Right.
And so it obviously takes time and effort to start building these audiences, as I'm sure you know as well. But with that consistent effort, it truly does pay off. And specifically when you're niche about it, in my opinion, or at least as a content consumer, that's what I tend to go towards, is more when someone's very specific on what they're talking about. So that could also be a key to trying to get started, or even just giving it a go on something that you're passionate about with a little bit more of a niche focus.
Yeah, 100%. Next thing I want to talk to you about is if we could switch gears a little bit to ACE. I know I kind of like went on the website a little bit. What I got from it is you guys are building an AI model that helps people with communication and like particularly like interview prep. Is that right?
You got it.
Okay, so how did you like? I'm really curious to always hear about like startup founders like journeys. So like, how did you get into like let's start from the beginning. Like, was this a problem that you were looking to solve for yourself, and then you kind of just built it, or like how did you come up with the idea for this and then start building this? How did that whole process happen?
Yeah. I think basically two things happened. Number one, my co-founder and I both always struggled with communication skills. And it took me years to get over it. And I'm still working on it, where when I'm nervous, I stumble over my words or I speak really fast, or something where I had to work really, really hard to get past it, because I knew that if I wanted to be in the business world or be an entrepreneur at some point or be in any professional role, I needed to have strong communication skills. So that was something that I faced. And then my co-founder, he's a absolutely brilliant developer. And he came to me and he said, listen, you spend like 16 hours a day, heads down coding. Pulling yourself out of that to talk to somebody, really hard. And I was like, you know what, that's fair. And he actually lost quite a few job opportunities, or just a couple things that he really could have gotten if his communication skills were there to be able to present himself. So he said, like, we need to work on something that will be able to fix this. And at the same time, I was graduating university, and coming out of university, everyone shifted their.
Don't you guys call it uni there?
Or uni, yes. Graduating uni. And at the same time, people went from loving uni to saying, oh my gosh, I need a full-time job. And all these people, the common terms I was hearing around that time was, I'm really excited about this, but I don't know how to properly stand out in this interview. What do I say to actually get the job? Like all this confusion around the interview. So kind of putting those two things together, I started noticing that a bit more. And my co-founder and I were like, you know what, we need to do something about this. We need to change the way that people learn communication skills, because it actually is a pretty abstract thing to try and learn. And it's not something that you can read out of a textbook. You truly do have to practice it. So we came together and we were thinking, how can we go about doing this in a way that's actually going to be helpful, going to be scalable? We can do this on a global level. And we realized that AI was the way to do it, because while having a human-based approach with something like mock interview coaches or career coaches is wonderful, it's not as scalable, and there's open to a lot of bias that could happen there. So we decided to go the technology route and be able to build something new and completely innovative that way. So got started, and here we are.
And then where does Next 36 fit into this? So like, this is the first time I'm actually hearing about Next. I mean,
cool.
In the States we have, I'm assuming it's similar to like Y Combinator.
Yeah.
Or something like that. But yeah, can you talk about Next 36, what it is, and what did you already have the idea for ACE, and is that how you got into Next 36, or how does that whole process work?
Yeah, so Next 36, their whole mission is basically it's a founder development program rather than an accelerator. And I like to think of it as the Canadian version of Y Combinator, but it's a little bit on the smaller scale compared. Obviously, Y Combinator is next level with all that kind of stuff. But Next Canada, their whole mission is to uplift young entrepreneurs to be more successful by giving them the resources like the mentorship, the education, the funding, the network, things like that, to be able to take their business to the next level. So how do you build a massively scalable enterprise? And so basically they look for people who are just coming out of university or maybe coming out of their master's or something like that, in that youth entrepreneurship stage, maybe first-time entrepreneurs just getting started, ready to take on an actually scalable venture. And it was funny because I came up with the idea like right at the same time as getting in. So they were mutually exclusive, but it worked hand in hand because it was really helpful to go through that program right at the time of coming up with this idea. So I kind of went through it at the exact same time of building the idea. But the way that Next 36 works is that you do 8 months of programming, 4 months intensive. And in that 4 months, I like to describe it as almost like a mini MBA, where you're doing all these incredible classes with exceptional professors, like from Harvard, from places like that. And they're teaching you all the fundamentals of entrepreneurship. So things that you wouldn't learn in the classroom at university. So things like negotiating a VC deal, understanding how to value your company properly. What are the key drivers of massively scalable companies? How do you get to the root of finding those key drivers and how do you take it and absolutely run with it. And then obviously having the network to teach you and bring in those insights so that you can see things on the grander scale of things. So it was kind of at the same time, but it was perfect timing for myself because it really gave me the launch pad that I needed to learn how to build a really scalable company.
Awesome. And then is it like, do you have to like apply, or if someone's interested, how can they look into that?
Yes. So definitely an application process and definitely one of the most intense ones I've ever done. So this was back in 2019, so obviously pre-pandemic. And at the time, what they did was they had what they call National Selection Weekend. So basically, if you're interested in Next 36, first you apply. And for Next 36, the applications start in November, December of each year. If you're a later stage company where you've got some revenue, you've got some scale, you've started already, they have a Next Founders program. And if you're an AI-based company, they have Next AI. But at the time, we were better fit for Next 36. So you apply for the written application and a video application. So you answer a couple of questions, you write about your story, like what makes you unique, different, ambitious, driven, etc. And then if you pass that stage, you get to the National Selection Weekend. And then 72 people are invited and 36 make it. So pretty much 50% get in, 50% are cut.
Oh, wow.
And so in that, it's basically like a Hunger Games style. It's pretty crazy where 3 days, I think I did maybe 8 or 9 interviews back to back in one day. And then you're just absolutely put on the grill of all these different questions. And because it's a founder development program, it's not about your business. Because at the time I was just starting ACE, so I didn't really have that fully formed idea, but they care more about the entrepreneur than they do about the idea, because it's more so about who are you going to be as an entrepreneur and how will you build something fantastic. So it was questions like just all over the place, testing every aspect of who I am as a person. And then you find out on the last day if you get in or not. So it was a pretty intense process, but really interesting, a really fun challenge to be doing. And you learn a lot about yourself in that process. So also just a nice reflection.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like if you didn't have the idea for ACE already, you probably solidified it there, like just
Certainly.
constant interviews. But yeah, so let's talk about ACE. Like, how do you, like, if I'm someone that wants help with my interview prep or just communication in general, how does it actually work? Do I record a video, send it to you, or like what, or like, I don't know, like what stage you're in, like, is it active running or you're still working on things? But, you know, what does it look like for a customer that wants to use ACE?
Yeah. So basically we have a fully automated platform. And so the stage that we're at right now is that we just finished our private beta, which was releasing our platform to a very small group of users to make sure that testing was done. We get some user feedback. We kind of iterate as we go and get ready for public launch as the AI was getting finished. And now we're actually reaching public launch right about now. So it's where we're launching the fully automated platform, starting to scale, starting to bring on new clients, things like that. But what the product actually is a platform where a user goes on. They have 2 options. One, they can complete exercises. So these are things like guides, research, exercises to help them prepare for an interview. Because we found that people have questions about things like, how do I do proper company research? How do I ask good questions in an interview? How do I stand out? What are these different factors? So we created a whole exercise directory to help learn those things. Then the second thing is the mock interview. So they go through the mock interview, they see a question, they video record themselves answering, and then they go through the whole interview at that point. Now, when they're done, right now, it takes a little bit of time for them to get their feedback report back, but the ultimate end goal, the V2 of all this will be that they get it instantly. But basically, the feedback report is our AI, which gives an analysis on their content, communication, and confidence. So these are things like, hey, Ahmed, you didn't, like, your eye contact was good, but you were looking around quite a bit. Maybe try and focus on one spot to keep the interviewer engaged. Or things like your tone, your fluctuation, your enthusiasm, what you're saying, if it makes logical sense, and if it's standing out, things like that. So all these different factors that analyze what is good and what could be improved about your communication skills.
Can I just upload the recording of this podcast? That gives me feedback.
Yeah, I mean, at some point maybe, but
Okay.
it's all about those mock interviews right now.
Got it. And then I guess one of the things that I really wanted to, I like to ask, especially for people that are, startup founders, is like,
Yeah.
for someone that's looking to, start a startup or, get in this space, become a founder, what is like advice that you would give for people in that situation that haven't taken the leap yet, haven't necessarily, gotten into Next 36, the people that are, looking, they're interested, they maybe have stable careers, stable, good grades
Mhm.
and college and stuff, and they're used to the stable path. What advice do you have for those people?
Yeah, I think what's really nerve wracking about starting a business is actually just starting. That was probably the hardest aspect of this whole thing because you have to venture out there, put your name to responsibility. You have to really, like, you're putting out a lot of risk, right? Because if it fails, then it seems like you failed on something. But it's kind of getting past those things and literally just getting started. I honestly think at this point, if I were starting all over again and I wish I had some advice for myself, I think one of the first things I would have done to help myself get started and just put myself out there is talk to other entrepreneurs because it's the easiest way to just learn that every single entrepreneur has a different story, a different path. They've gone through so many different highs and lows, more lows probably than highs, but it's all worth it in the end. And so I think my advice would be if you're nervous about getting started or you're kind of unsure or you're kind of thinking like, what's the immediate next step? What should I do? It's talking to people and it doesn't have to be an entrepreneur or a founder who's in the exact same space as you. I think it can be literally anybody who started a business because everybody has a different experience with it. And so the other lovely thing about this world that I really like a lot is that a lot of people have founder friends and fellow colleagues who are doing the same thing, but just in completely different ways. So if someone comes and asks me like, hey, how do you do X, Y, Z? I would say, oh, I actually don't know. I haven't done that myself, but I do know somebody who does. And that's how like 98% of my things have got done. Like when I was trying to figure out incorporation, when I was figuring out pricing, when I was figuring out how to bring on an intern, grants, subsidies, this, that, whatever. You're never really like fully alone in this, even though it can feel lonely sometimes as an entrepreneur. So I think the first and foremost thing to do is start to build that network, which if anybody is listening and ever wants to reach out, I am happy to chat about that because I do love meeting other entrepreneurs. So always welcome to chat about anything.
Yeah, I think that's super important what you said because a lot of times, especially in like entrepreneurship, is like you're on this little island where like it's just you, trying to figure everything out, and it feels like no one
Very
else
much
really
so.
understands it. Especially if like your friends are all like, they have jobs and they have careers.
Exactly.
It's like, who do I even talk to about this? They won't get it. That's one of the reasons why in the podcast I try to like interview like startup founders at least
Mhm.
every so often, and like it always gets me pumped. And so like after like enough of those interviews, you're just like, okay, like maybe I can figure this out. So
Absolutely.
definitely I would like to echo the same sentiment there. I just start talking to these people that are doing it. And now in terms of like Next 36, what do you think is like the most valuable piece of that experience? If you had to like summarize like like where you got the most value in that. I know you said there's
Yeah.
mentorship, there's classes. What do you think is the most important part of that whole program?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a hard question because I truly enjoyed every aspect of it. And now I've been an alumni for about 3 years and I'm still loving every aspect of it. I think if I had to boil it down to one single thing, it's probably the network that they have because the education was phenomenal. Don't get me wrong, but it was a network that continues to build on itself, add more value. And it's really nice. Like actually just how I mentioned, when you're trying to learn about how to do something, when you need help from people, like that's the first place I go when I need help with something. There's also like a bunch of other different communities out there. It's not just Next 36, but they're really, really exceptional with their network and the caliber of people and the willingness of people to help. So that's something that I really enjoy. And it was something that was really cool. Like even one of my favorite times during the program itself was I was trying to figure out what was it? I was trying to figure out something to do with my distribution of trying to get this product out there and figuring out my business model and all this fun stuff. And I reached out to my programs team at Next and I was like, listen, I need help with this. Do you have anybody that you can recommend to help me just trying to understand like the flywheel of what I'm working on? Like, how do I get this momentum going of this business? And literally within 2 days, I had a call booked with the CFO of Win Mobile. And he was so helpful. And it just happened all of a sudden, just so quickly. Like, I don't think that's a connection I would ever get if I wasn't in Next 36.
Hmm.
So Not to say that you can't get that if you're not in X36, but it was just incredible at how powerful the network is and how fast it moves and how much they're willing to help young entrepreneurs, because that's the most supportive aspect of it. And I would say, but everything else about it was really lovely. The network is something that's the gift that keeps on giving.
Right. You mentioned distribution, and like, I'm kind of curious as to like what your distribution strategy is for ACE. I don't know if you're comfortable sharing. We don't have to
Oh,
get into it,
absolutely.
but
Yeah.
yeah, like how does that, like, what did that, I don't know if you want to get into that conversation, or like, what does your flywheel look like? How do you think through distribution for ACE?
Yeah, actually, this is a really interesting story, one that came through from a big failure of ours, which is why it's an interesting one. But when I started this business, I was so naive, and I thought that because I was in university, that universities would want this product, just being naive in my own environment. And turns out they did not want it.
Oh,
So
really?
it was really interesting because I just assumed that because people are going to university, they're going to be looking for full-time jobs after. That's the natural path. Sure, that's the path for a percentage of people, but so many people it's not. And there's like thousands of different roles that people could be applying to when they come out of university. So the hard thing with the AI is that you do need to focus it towards some sort of niche or some sort of group first before you can take that and scale it. So you can't just do it for every single role, because if you do, it'd be such general advice that it's not really as helpful as it possibly could be, where people do need the feedback on their content. So I think we did this. We tried to verify this model for maybe like 5-6 months, and we had absolutely no interest. We were just falling flat on our face time and time again. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But it was funny because someone had told me an analogy that really helped me kind of just ground myself and get everything figured out, which is, if you think about the price of water, if you get it at home, it's free. If you get it at a convenience store, it's $1. But if you're going to the movie theaters, it's $7, and people still pay for that. So what does that tell you? It's just about where you are and where you're selling that product. So not that our product was invalidated and there's no need and nobody should ever use it because universities don't want it. We're just in the wrong market. So when we came to that realization that things were not working out at the universities and we weren't getting the validation that we needed, I was basically on discovery mode again and trying to figure out, okay, where do we see this burning need? Like, where are people saying we need this yesterday? And I started to see a rise of coding boot camps happening across the world, specifically in Africa, because there's a lot of really talented youth, and the youth population is growing really quickly. They're getting more access to digital education and things like laptops, mobiles, things like that. So I started reaching out. I was like, I'm curious. Like, I really love the idea of people who are looking for remote international jobs, trying to upskill themselves, trying to take their next step in their career. And when I reached out to these coding boot camps, they literally said, we need something like this literally right now. Like, I cannot stress this enough. Our talents are really, really exceptionally talented. However, they need help on the communication skill side. Mm-hmm. And so now our business model is B2B SaaS, like software as a service. And we're selling to these coding boot camps. So they license our product and they use it for their students to upskill themselves. And so the reason we went B2B instead of B2C is because the good and the bad news is that if we went B2C, if somebody gets the job, that's great. However, they stop using our platform. So it's a bittersweet situation there. So with the B2B, it actually helps us a lot because it's a consistent monthly licensing for all their students, no matter like the current students, the alumni, whoever. So long story short, we are B2B to coding boot camps.
That's pretty cool. I would assume that like business schools and engineering schools would have a need for this, but yeah, I guess they have their own priorities.
Yes. And it's also, you realize how difficult it is to get through so many different levels of just like these organizations. It's really hard to get into, and it takes a lot of time. And not that I'm sure if we kept trying, maybe we'd be able to get a couple contracts here and there if we were more focused, but I'm now extremely passionate about this whole coding bootcamp space, that we're just seeing the interest. We're seeing people actually benefit from it. It's something that's really bringing us this like mission impact driven business that we want it to be. So that's why we're focused on that right now.
Mm-hmm. Now, Lauren, before we close, I always like to give my guests a little bit of time to share where the audience can find them, their companies. For you, you're probably gonna have to go through like 6-7 links. We have Game Ball, we have Ace, and then like, I don't know if you share content personally as well. But yeah, where can people find you and Gameball and Ace and you?
Yeah, so I would say easiest place is probably LinkedIn. You can connect with me. That's where everything is. Where I keep all my stuff going there. I haven't really done a lot of content, but I likely will be starting soon, given that we're launched on the Ace side of things. But for Gameball, if you're a business owner or anybody on a team that's working towards trying to figure out a new retention strategy or trying to build a rewards program for your customers, you can reach out to myself at any point. I'm always happy to do it. That's what I do day in, day out with trying to create new rewards programs for different businesses every day. So I do love it because every strategy is different. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can reach out through the Gameball site. You can download Gameball and then also book a consultation call where you'll likely get me to chat with. So, or someone from my lovely team as well. So a couple different ways to reach out for Gameball. And then for Ace, you can also reach out on LinkedIn. You can reach out through our website, which is aceinterviewprep.io, which I'm sure we'll have a link to somewhere around. And I would say LinkedIn is probably the best place, or you can find my emails through both of those websites as well. So easiest place is probably LinkedIn to start, but anyway is absolutely fine.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren. Now, as always, I have my key takeaways from this episode. But before we get into that, I want to share a clip from our discussion with Richard White on building startups.
Think about this, how big of a pain point are we solving, and how frequently does that pain point happen, right?
Yes.
Maybe I really hate buying Christmas gifts, and it's a huge pain point if you me. But that only happens once a year. So multiply those two things together, mediocre kind of pain point. I'm not going to really tell my friends about it. It doesn't happen enough. But it's something happens to you every business day, and it's kind of painful. Great.
If you enjoyed this discussion with Lauren, I'm sure you'll also enjoy the episode with Richard. Check it out wherever you're listening to this podcast. It is episode number 56. Now, here are my key takeaways. Number 1, customer retention isn't copy-paste. You can't just simply implement a rewards program because X company in your industry has one. See how you can uniquely serve your customers. And number 2, if you're nervous about becoming an entrepreneur or starting something, talk to entrepreneurs. It'll really help you get over that initial hump. And that is all for this episode. If you enjoyed this discussion, the easiest way that you can help out this podcast is to go to YouTube and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We have a lot of different content we're working on that is completely different from the podcast. We have video essays that we're putting a lot of time and energy into. We're really pushing to grow that YouTube channel right now, and it doesn't cost a thing to subscribe. So please, I'll leave the link in the description. Check it out. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next episode.